Welcome back to the verdict. Let's get back to Mr. Clement Wankwo, convener of the Situation Room. Well, concerning the case about voters who said they were not allowed, they couldn't vote in the Sabongeri area of Kano. I think I remember at some point when that matter was raised in one of those INEC stakeholders meeting, or is it one of the briefings, or either another results or thereabout, when the INEC chairman did say, well, at the time, it had not been brought to his notice. There was no report about that at the time. So if the media had reported it and civil society organizations have brought it up as well, and INEC officials responsible for it don't bring it to the attention of the INEC chairman, will it be tenable? What do we do in that case?
Well, when this came to our attention, we did escalate this to the Resident Electoral Commissioner, to the INEC chairman. We did get the same response, which is that they have not any information about this. We kept having people in those locations who kept calling frantically to say that they were being disenfranchised. We did not get any response from the Electoral Commission to say that this is the action that is being taken. So quite frankly, the responsiveness to some of these complaints on voting day is always an issue, and I think that if people have been disenfranchised, it's a critical question to ask why this is so, and then what is the extent of response from the Commission. I still think that if a significant population of the country had come out to vote and have been prevented from doing so, then that's a major issue. Just as we speak as well, there are issues with respect, and I keep mentioning with Rivers State, with Imo State, where in fact one of INEC's local government offices have been burnt in Ishialambano because of a standoff going on there about forcing election officials to make a certain return. There must be some way of dealing with this problem that responds to a genuine intention to have genuine results put out. And I think that that is where the gap is with respect to these issues. If we've come from 2015, we expect progress. It is difficult to reach a conclusion at this time that we have progressed from 2015. And indeed, the question is, have we gone back? Indications at this time is worrying, and I think at the end of the day, that determination will be made whether we indeed have gone back to where we were coming from, which was the era of votes not counting.
Mr. Clement, how do we get past that threshold where it will seem to suggest that even as we identify that these flaws exist, as we have seen for these elections, and complaints are coming through, the CSOs are complaining to INEC, the media is also complaining to INEC. What do we do about the timing, the response time for INEC to be able to come through with this, in response to these complaints that were made? Is it that INEC will have to go through some kind of deliberation in the first instance before it issues out a statement, and then not having the players in this cases, or should I say ward levels, or even at senatorial levels or the House of Reps levels, wouldn't have to go to the extent of having to face a tribunal before INEC goes back to sort out the issues that were complained about in those areas?
Well, I think that that's been part of the Achilles heels of elections. If INEC is unable to respond immediately and persons carry out electoral offenses with impunity and know that the only thing that INEC can do is to hands up and say, look, it's now a tribunal matter. And then when it comes to the tribunals, we then have to deal with the question whether judges who are in these tribunals are going to be free and fair in the way that they administer justice. And we've seen a lot of abuse of justice, abuse of the judicial process, and we have seen even in recent weeks the attack on the judiciary from the executive, questions arising, what was the intention of that? Are we at that stage where you are now going to see that given the intimidation and attack on the judiciary, this will impact on the way judicial processes and petitions are handled in this period. So I think that we have to really go back to ask the question, why is our electoral process failing? Why are electoral officials, particularly electoral officers, the EOs in the different local governments, acting with so much brazen impunity? Even sometimes the resident electoral commissioners are unable to reach them on the phone, are unable to correct them, are unable to give them directives. These are issues that raise questions. What is the punishment that is available, and how is that punishment enforced, and how do you insulate state institutions from helping to abuse the electoral process? Because we have been mentioning this from day one, that state institutions have become active and partisan participants in the electoral process. We have seen that manifest at this time, and my point is really, and this point has been made repeatedly, that if elections were to be fought and won on an illegitimate way, you would have an illegitimate government, you would have a Pyrrhic victory, and the crisis of the country will continue. I fear that we may be in that stage already.
Mr. Nwankwo, how much of the constraints of INEC in responding to these issues expeditiously can be blamed on logistic access?
I didn't get a question, I'm sorry.
How much of INEC's response constraint to the areas where these issues occur, how much of that can be blamed on their access, being able to access those places?
Well, access is a key thing, but it takes you, this commission has been on ground for at least 3 years. In that period, you would know where all the polling units are, you would know where the difficult terrains are, you would be able to map out, you have an election plan that guides you as to how to deal with all of these issues. I think that blaming access after the conduct of elections cannot be an acceptable excuse for failings. If you've had 3 years to plan for an election, I think that collaboration and cooperation between all of the stakeholders becomes really important. The Electoral Act is very clear. INEC should give directions to other stakeholders and institutions of state who are needed to participate in the process. The question is, are those state institutions respecting INEC, taking directives from INEC on how they can contribute to the success of the elections, or are they in their own planning working to sabotage INEC's efforts? And I see a lot of that has gone on.
Well, we understand that there was also a call for independent inquiry into poor management of the process. What do we seek to achieve with that, especially if we want spontaneity in response?
Yes, the Situation Room has looked at what has happened, and clearly we believe that there are serious lapses, serious enough to call for an inquiry into the management of the election process, into the role played by all stakeholders. And this is not just INEC alone, the security services, and indeed every stakeholder who has participated in this election. We need to inquire into what role persons have played, institutions have played, and how that has impacted on these elections. We're quite clear in stating that these elections have not advanced the gains that we made in the 2015 elections, and indeed may actually have retrogressed the progress made. So I think that it calls seriously for an inquiry. If we do have a situation where so much money has been spent in conducting elections, then we really must ask the question, why have we not moved forward?
We know that there were several meetings that were held for security or among security agencies, including INEC, and they have spoken about who was going to be in charge of where, what, and when. But on the day of elections, what did you find concerning security?
Well, again, it's a question, how do you ensure? If we look at the budget that was made for the conduct of this election, we did see INEC making it very clear that they had no issues with the budget. We did see budget provisions being made for the security services. And I think that this is one country in the world where we see so much resources being voted for elections, and indeed even for security services. We need to ask the question, what was their role in the elections? How did they help to facilitate the elections? Were they taking directives from INEC? What sort of directives did INEC give them? And if INEC gave directives and they're not being followed, INEC needs to say so. INEC cannot take the full responsibility for any failings with respect to the elections. Where there are failings that are associated with stakeholders, stakeholders, then INEC needs to say so as well. But certainly, I do think that Nigerians do not feel satisfied that we have advanced our electoral process, and indeed worries that we may have retrogressed.